Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parish. The Grizzlies lost on Tuesday night to the Orlando Magic, 109-105. I would say it was kind of a bad loss. I don't think there maybe are supposed to be bad losses in the preseason, but I feel like coming on the heels of the defeat to the Heat, where the Heat were resting a lot of their regular players, and so you think maybe that's a wake-up call. We can't just go through the motions. We got to bring it every night. We got to stay hungry. We're no longer a team that is hunting teams down. We are now the hunted. This is what Taylor Jenkins referred to after the game. So the Grizzlies go into this game against a Magic team they beat comfortably a week ago, and they come out flat. They make only 5 of 20 field goal attempts in the first quarter, and they never catch up. They don't take the lead at any moment of this game. They tied it once, and you lose to a Magic team that wasn't close to full strength. Yeah, they had a strong front court. They have Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, who missed the first matchup in the preseason between these two teams. He played. You have Wendell Carter Jr., but they're missing their preferred starters. They don't have Jalen Suggs out there. They don't have Marco Fultz out there. They don't have Gary Harris out there. Like Terrence Ross, who's normally a sixth man, started. Cole Anthony, who started some games last year, he started. The Magic second unit were not players that should be able to keep up with the Grizzlies, but they did, and the Magic get a win, and the Grizzlies have a very dispiriting performance. And they've got now one more preseason game to try to maybe get on the right track. I honestly would be surprised if the Grizzlies regulars even played in the final preseason game. I don't think the result of this one is going to affect the internal decisions on whether or not to play their players. But, you know, maybe they will play some of the regulars on Thursday night. There are some things to take away from this game. It's not panic time or like get worried time, but I think there are some notable things that are worth talking about. The formula for this one, the broad strokes of this game. I mean, the good stuff, Desmond Bane was awesome. Desmond Bane shook off the bad shooting performances of being at home. He's continued his road warrior status, made 4 out of 6 3-pointers and scored 33 points, led the team with 33 points, was really having an excellent game. Unfortunately, he was the only one. Ja Morant, an extremely subpar game. He finished with 23 points, but that's on 24 field goal attempts. At halftime, he was just 2 for 12 from the field. He had 0 assists in the first half. He wasn't able to score in the half-court offense. He wasn't able to get the buckets to fall in the lane. His three-point stroke, totally non-existent. He was 0 for 6 from 3. Dylan Brooks did not have a good game. The entire bench didn't really have a good game. Tyus Jones continued his shooting slump. The rookies, Jake LaRavia and David Roddy, weren't making their shots. And the overall effect is you lose to this Magic team that isn't expected to be that good, and you have a pretty weak performance. You're beaten on the glass. Once again, you're not winning the second chance scoring battle. You're not forcing those turnovers. We all know the formula for success last year. The Grizzlies made up for below average field goal percentage. They made up for poor free throw shooting with extra possessions generated from offensive rebounds, from forcing turnovers, getting out in transition. We've highlighted how maybe they've acknowledged that that isn't the formula they want this year. They want to improve their half-court offense. Well, the half-court offense so far, not improved. Just preseason. We're not panicking yet. But the half-court offense just looks the same. not very good. And then you're not generating those steals, those turnovers, those block shots, and you're not winning the battle on the glass so far. Like Steven Adams, he was dominant out there in this game. He as far as rebounding, he got his 5 offensive rebounds like he's going to do. He did miss some easy layups. He had some opportunities to put the ball in the basket and just kind of blew the layups. That contributed to the Grizzlies not being dominant in the paint. They shot 46% on their field goal attempts in the paint, which is, again, not up to par for what we expect from this Grizzlies team. If you look at the entire preseason, and again, I'm going to keep saying it's just the preseason. We're not sounding the alarms. But if you look at the preseason so far, and you consider how, last season, you were tops in the NBA in total rebounds, in offensive rebounds, and steals and blocks. Well, so far through this preseason, the team is 20th in block shots. Now, obviously, no Jaren Jackson Jr. That's going to affect the team, but you know what? He's also not going to be there when the season starts. So the block shots are not going to be there. The steals are still a little bit there. They're 6th in the preseason in the NBA in total steals. And, of course, talking about preseason stats is absurd on the premise. I'm just throwing these out. You draw your own conclusions. I'm not saying it's a problem. But we know the block shots probably aren't going to be there. The rebounding is not there either. And I do think that might be a slight problem. Rebounding is going to be important for this team. You're going to need those second chance opportunities, especially when you continue shooting three-pointers as poorly as this team is shooting three-pointers. They are 24th in the NBA in three-pointers per game in the preseason and 27th in three-point percentage. They're shooting under 30% on threes for the preseason. Also, this is kind of funny. Turnovers per game in the preseason, the Grizzlies are 31st. There's only 30 NBA teams. The NBA preseason stats include the Adelaide 36ers and Maccabi Ra'anana. So the Grizzlies are turning the ball over way too much, and they're not making their shots. Now, how much of that is fixable? How much of that will be fine once we get to the regular season? Some of it, hopefully. Like, Tyus Jones is not going to shoot 12% for the year. I mean, Tyus Jones is 2 for 17 on field goals so far in the preseason. He hit a pull-up three-pointer in this one. You're like, all right, maybe that's a slump buster. No, he didn't really have that strong of a game. Aldama made some shots in this one, and one of the most interesting things about this game for me is the way the rotation was tweaked. I guess I could go and say it now. Like, Zaire Williams did not play. I didn't see him listed as inactive. They didn't talk about it on the Magic broadcast, the only broadcast we had for this game. Apparently, he was in street clothes. Seems like we could see him in a hoodie sitting on the sideline. So Zaire Williams just getting the night off as far as we know, and thus they went with a Roddy LaRavia Conchar rotation on the second unit. But going back to Aldama, he started the game, was basically fine, got some offensive rebounds. But in the second half, he did not start the second half. This is the first half of basketball this preseason where Santi Aldama was not a starter. They put John Conchar in to start the second half. Our second half starters were Desmond Bane, John Morant, Dylan Brooks, John Conchar, and Steven Adams. This is a departure from anything else we've seen so far this preseason. It's the first time they've gone a little bit small. I mean, I don't know who your default power forward is there. Is it Conchar since he is taking Aldama's minutes? Do we have Dylan Brooks there as a power forward? They went small. They even closed the game small. They had Ja with Desmond, Dylan, Conchar, and then Tillman. Tillman got a surprise ad the final 6 minutes. I didn't know what that was about either. Was Steven Adams tired? Do they want to find an opportunity to work Tillman into the rotation? So I don't know why Aldama did not start the second half, if they liked the lineup combination. Aldama had his hands full trying to guard Paolo Banchero or Franz Wagner. He could not do it, which is not surprising. Jake LaRavia also had no chance at guarding Franz Wagner or Paolo Banchero. The Grizzlies right now, with no Jaren Jackson Jr., don't have really anyone who can check a 6'10 guy who can dribble and who can score and has good body control. Like Banchero was just out muscling everybody. It's a little bit of a matchup concern for the Grizzlies when they end up facing some of these good teams in the regular season. But Conchar got the start in the second half in the third quarter, and then Aldama went to a second unit role. Maybe they like that pairing more of Aldama and Brandon Clark on the second units with Roddy and LaRavia. I'm not sure. It was an interesting look, and it's just something else to consider. Like when they face teams that have talented power forwards, like what are you going to do? Like when you play Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram on the Pelicans, who's going to guard those guys? Like Conchar and Dylan Brooks had some nice moments checking Franz Wagner in the fourth quarter when the Grizzlies tried to make a rally. When the Grizzlies tried to make a rally and get it a little bit closer, they held their own despite giving up several inches of size. But those guys couldn't guard Banchero, and they had multiple players where they could punish the Grizzlies' lack of size. Brandon Clark tried to check Franz Wagner at the end, but then, Wagner hit that step-back three-pointer to ice the game. Then, of course, Wagner picked Ja Morant's pocket to truly end it. By the way, that pocket picking of Ja Morant, that was Ja Morant's first turnover of the game. So at least Ja took care of the basketball, even if nothing else was really working for him. This loss, despite being preseason, also kind of shows the issue that when Jaren's out, you have one less option of somebody who can save you, I feel like. You have Ja who can generate his own shot and is an all-NBA type player. And you depend so much on Ja. And then you have Desmond and Dylan. And like Desmond was cooking this game. But you look at your team and you're like, all right, we need multiple of those guys to be on. If both Ja and Dylan are off, it's going to be tough to win this year. Last year, it's like, all right, if Ja and Dylan are off, hopefully Bane and Jaren have it going on. Right now, we don't really have that fourth guy that we think can step up and provide offense. Like, I don't know who it's going to be. Everyone on the bench is a low-usage guy. Until proven otherwise, like LaRavia and Roddy aren't going to come in and give you 20 points in a game. Like, it's possible neither one of them score 20 points in a game all year. I mean, certainly they could, but I don't think they're going to do it a lot. Also, going back to the troubling three-point shooting, we know the focus on the draft was to get shooting, but so far it hasn't been there. The focus of the offseason was to improve the shooting. We haven't seen it. LaRavia so far in the preseason is 3 for 14 on three-pointers, which is 21.4%, and Roddy is 3 for 15 on three-pointers, which is 20%. Also, they did not make three-pointers at a very good percentage in Summer League. Although Roddy, by the way, Roddy might be an incredible free throw shooter. He's 11 for 12 on the preseason, and that's on the heels of him shooting 88% in Summer League. So Roddy's free throw shooting is awesome. Hopefully that is a sign of some upside as far as his shooting percentages, that with a good free throw stroke, he can turn that into becoming a very good jump shooter in the NBA. I mean, maybe that fourth guy we're hoping is going to be Zaire Williams, who didn't dress. Like, Zaire's going to be the guy who can give you 20 points on nights where Dylan Brooks doesn't have it, on nights where Ja Morant is struggling. Because right now, there aren't a lot of options. Right now, you played a Magic team that ran zone a lot of the game, or more than you normally see in an NBA game. And the Grizzlies just had a bunch of guys who couldn't create their own shots and didn't have a good plan for how to get through this zone. You also keep playing a lot of guys who are hesitant to shoot. It's not just they don't create their own shots, they're a little bit hesitant. John Conchar, who we need to step up and make some threes this year, he got promoted in the depth chart with the offseason moves. Through the first three quarters, he had 0 points. He finished with a 9% usage, which is really low for a guy getting as many minutes as he got. He did make 2 3-pointers in the fourth quarter. It was great to see. He stepped up, knocked down the 3-pointers like we need him to do. But that's the thing that's got to happen all game. Now, Brandon Clark was the only bench guy who made his field goal attempts. He was 3 for 3 from the field. But Brandon Clark, man, only taking 3 shots. Feels like we got to get more out of Brandon. It's also interesting where you had 3 starters play over 30 minutes. Dylan Brooks, Desmond Bane, and Ja Morant, the Grizzlies' big 3. They all played nearly 32 minutes. They closed the game. So it seems like this was more like a dress rehearsal, getting closer to regular season minutes. Well, Brandon Clark played 8.5 minutes in the first half, 8.5 minutes in the second half. He played 17 minutes. 17 minutes of playing time for Brandon Clark when Jaren Jackson Jr. is unavailable is strange. That's odd to me. I don't know why he's not playing at least 20 minutes. I don't know why he's not sharing the court at least some with Steven Adams. Once again, this game, Brandon Clark and Steven Adams played 0 minutes together. I would assume that Brandon Clark would have a bigger role. Is Brandon Clark being limited in action because physically the unspoken thing we have to theorize about, because we're always confused about his minutes, physically he can't hold up to a lot of minutes, and so they're saving him. They're going to say, let's play him 17 minutes in this preseason game. Maybe come the regular season, we'll unleash him to 21 minutes, 22 minutes. But I'm very surprised so far that Brandon Clark isn't given a bigger role when Santi Aldama ends up with 24 minutes. When LaRavia and Roddy each get 16, it's a little bit surprising that Clark isn't playing more. As far as the rotation breakdown, I already talked about how, it was weird how they flipped Conchar into the starting lineup, or maybe just quizzical. Not saying it's weird, which is something we hadn't seen yet. It seemed like they were really standing firm with Aldama and Steven Adams as the front court pairing to start. But because of this, we saw lots of lineups where the 2 through 4 did feel totally interchangeable. I know Taylor Jenkins has always said that's the way it's supposed to work, where like Jake LaRavia would sub in for Desmond Bane, and then Desmond Bane would sub in for Jake LaRavia. So does that mean LaRavia's playing the 2 now? When you have Tyus Jones and Brandon Clark as your 1 and 5 as default, and then you have Aldama, Roddy, and LaRavia 2 through 4, I guess Aldama's the 4 because he's the tallest, but those roles did seem interchangeable. Of course, they didn't have a lot of success with those lineups, and once again, the question is, who's going to shoot? When Tyus Jones, Jake LaRavia, David Roddy, Santi Aldama, and Brandon Clark are on the court, who's going to create their own shot? Who's going to generate looks for others? Is that a workable formation? Is that a workable lineup come the regular season? Now, regular season, we assume Zaire Williams is going to be in there. Are we just depending a lot on Zaire Williams as shot creator? I don't know. This loss, again, combined with the Miami loss, kind of now you start to think like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's preseason, but there are maybe starting to be tiny cracks in the confidence level of a lot of Grizzlies fans. I do think it highlights some concerning issues where you're like, all right, maybe it's going to be a little bit harder this year. Maybe we're not going to cruise to the second best record. We are definitely going to face some adversity while Jaren Jackson Jr. is out, and also adversity of everyone hearing about the Grizzlies all year, hearing about the Grizzlies being put on national television, being a team that people circle on their calendar as, hey, Ja Morant's coming to town. Let's beat this team. They're a hot ticket. The Grizzlies are a hot ticket on the road for the first time in my life, where opposing fans want to see Ja Morant play, and the Grizzlies, they definitely need to step up and be ready. Let's wrap up this show with a little bit of news. Justin Bean and Jacob Gilyard were waived by the team. Apologies that I barely mentioned them on the show anyway. Apparently, Justin Bean maybe won a dance competition at the open practice last Sunday. The Grizzlies replaced them on the training camp roster with Sean McDermott and Matt Hurt, guys who have been around, been in the organization before. Familiar names. The team obviously likes having them around, likes them in their system, possibly likes them rejoining the hustle this year. And also, Yahoo Sports reported that the Grizzlies are not interested in Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder, there's not much movement as far as trade talk for him. I know I recorded an episode saying why it would be a good reason for the Grizzlies to pursue Jay Crowder, but I don't think any of us thought they actually would. their MO seems to be, let's just stick with the guys we have internally and let's develop them. We don't need to trade anything of value to bring in a veteran. Also, of course, in this report by Jake Fisher of Yahoo, the Suns not really interested in bringing back Danny Green. But in that report, it says the Grizzlies had not reached out about Jay Crowder at all. So again, we're not really surprised by that. Anyways, next Grizzlies game is Thursday night, October 13th. I'll be doing a playback watch party once again for that one as the Grizzlies and Pistons play. It's at 6 p.m. Central. And then after that, opening night. Make sure you get your tickets. Call 901-888-HOOP. Be there for the Grizzlies and Knicks on October 19th, Wednesday night at 7. The following Friday, if you're in the Nashville area, Friday, October 21st, I will be hosting a watch party at Noble's Beer Hall in Nashville, giving away Grizzlies prizes to everyone who comes to that. So make sure you're there, 7 p.m. on Friday night, October 21st, a Grizzlies Nashville watch party at Noble's Beer Hall. Anyways, appreciate you guys listening to this episode. Hope you're having a great Wednesday. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz.